Way. Is this thing on? Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Jean Goss.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Edward Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Rachel Arizmendi.
Present.
Councilmember Kelly Creeps.
Here.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilmember Richelle Arizmendi will be presenting leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration.
Yeah, if we can all please stand. And if we can all say together the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think it's an interesting habit that we've got into to sit down after our pledge. We used to stand for the inspiration, but I think because of the pandemic and doing everything virtually, but then at the same time I would ask for everyone to please sit down during the inspiration, so this works out very nicely for me. I just want to share a few words today. April 24th marks the Day of Remembrance for the Armenian Genocide, and despite denials that the genocide occurred, it's been 107 years since the heinous crimes were committed against the Armenian people in the Ottoman Empire. 1.5 million Armenians were either deported, massacred, or marched to their deaths in a campaign of extermination. Here in Southern California, there is an estimated 250,000 Armenians, the largest concentration of Armenians outside of Armenia. So I will just ask for all of us to let us not forget. And along the same vein, let us all please keep Ukraine in our prayers. And that's all I have today, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Arizmendi. Now let's move forward to the meeting agenda. I'd like to see if we have a motion for approval of the agenda as it is.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we now have an agenda, and I'd like to also see if I can get a motion for approval for reading resolutions and ordinances.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, now we're just rolling right along. Now we have one set of meeting minutes from our special meeting to look over, so I'd like to see if we have any motions for amendment or approval on that.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, those in support, please say aye.
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 All right, and now mayor and city council reports. Who would like to go first? As I scan to my left, to my right, and back to my left. Yes, Councilmember Creeps.
So I have to say that it was quite the Earth Day celebration in Sierra Madre this past weekend. Not only were we able to celebrate on the actual day with the ribbon cutting at our new solar array project that will power, in part, the utility, we are also able, for the first time as a city, to come together to celebrate Earth Day on Saturday at a really marvelous Earth Day celebration put on by staff. I really have to commend staff for their efforts and the initiative to put together this fair. I think it was very well attended. I was there towards the end, and everyone was saying how many people had been there and how much interest there was in the various booths and information. And I really thought it was just a really nice event. Beautiful day, as Earth Day should be. So I just wanted to commend the city for both events. I mean, that's back to back. That's really impressive, and I think it really does speak well of our community, how involved people are and concerned people are with the environmental issues that face us. And I think our city is really on the forefront. It was really nice to hear a whole host of our elected officials from federal to county really celebrate our efforts and really laud us as a trendsetter and a example for the region. So I was just blown away by our efforts this weekend. So I did actually also wanted to just promote some of the fire hazard reduction programs, that the fire department has coming up. And there's a whole flyer that they were giving out actually at the Saturday event, and I'm sure it's available on the website. But just coming up next week is a fire prevention workshop and a smart chipper and green waste day. That's on the 2nd and the 7th respectively. So just wanted to get that out there too, because we're really looking to start off, well, what really is year-round fire season, but prepare for fire season in a way to get ready to do our prevention efforts.
Councilmember Parkhurst?
Sure. So I'll start off as I always do. There was a CPA board meeting in between our council meetings. We also had the Natural Resources Commission, and that meeting was canceled due to lack of a quorum. I also will echo the solar panel and the Earth Day. Sierra Madre consistently punches above its weight in this. We are a unique city. We're one of the few cities in Los Angeles County to have a solar array that's as big as it is. The statistic that always sticks with me is that the nearly 1 million kilowatt hours that array will generate would be equivalent to driving around the Earth at the equator 68 times. Gives you an idea of what it can do. It'll save us, I think, at least $70,000 this year. So that's fantastic. And the fact that we were able to get our elected officials up and down, or all the way up to the national level to attend was fantastic. I also want to thank staff for Earth Day. I want to thank it came out of the Natural Resources Commission that helped to put it together. Staff did a phenomenal job. The flyer, I love the flyer, it looked great. The number of booths, there were about 18 booths that showed up. I got a chance to talk to, I think, every one of them. All of them had really valuable information on it. There was some information around fire prevention. The Forest Service was there, and they were talking about how it is year-round fire in kind of the western U.S., and right now there's all these fire crews in New Mexico and Arizona until the monsoons hit in about June, and then everybody comes our way. And so we're truly becoming a western community fighting fires. I also am excited. There was a booth there about battery-powered lawn equipment, and it's something that I think that, and I'm seeing nodding heads here for the council, something that I think we should consider when we're up for our next lawn maintenance contract. I think it's something that'll be really interesting and exciting. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Other reports? Councilmember Mindy.
Sure. I don't want to duplicate what's already been said, but I think it goes without saying that staff really need to be commended also for everything that went on during Earth Day and all of our partners. And I do want to highlight the fact that Councilman Parkhurst really did charge the effort of the Earth Day. It's our first ever, and we had a great turnout. And one quick thing, sorry, I'm going back and forth with the solar power. I've been saying 700, 800,000 kilowatt hours. Little did I know I was underestimating us by 200. So I think, again, that the fact that we are lauded also as one of the first cities in the 88 cities in LA County says so much. So congratulations to all of us here, and a special thanks for the staff for making all of that happen.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so ditto on all that. The ribbon cutting was a great event, and again, I'd like to thank staff for putting together a great event, and to have our U.S. representative, our senator for the state, someone from our assembly member's office, as well as our county supervisor there, and speaking to them after the presentations, they're so impressed with our city of Sierra Madre, and that goes a long way when we have asks. When we build relationships with these other elected officials for our little town, they are impressed with what we do, and they know we're doing a good job, from citizens all the way up to the elected, through staff, everybody, that we're on a good path for good relationships for the future. So I'm very proud of that. Briefly, last Tuesday I attended the City of Arcadia's City Council meeting. I presented Mayor Chote with a certificate of recognition. I was accompanied by City Manager Jose Reynoso. Upon my introduction, the City of Arcadia said some very nice things about our city. And I will say that maybe a decade ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So again, bravo to staff, councils before me, this current council, for building bridges with our regional partners. It was a nice event, and it was nice to be able to be welcomed at their city council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Oh gosh, I have a little bit longer report and some announcements I want to share with everyone. I did get a chance to represent the city along with my colleague over here, Councilmember Parkhurst, on April 16th for the ribbon cutting at Savor the Flavor. Most of you, I think, are aware that they moved across Baldwin to the east side of Baldwin, and they have just an amazing new shop. It's bigger, it's more brightly lit, it's got a dressing room in it, and they're just really excited. It was a lot of fun to be there and share that with them, and congrats again to Maddie and Karen on the beautiful new shop. Yes, Friday, I don't know if I really have a whole lot more to add about the solar array project, except as mayor I got to cut the ribbon. So it was personally very exciting for me on that level, and I got to say a few words. But I echo what is being said here. Our electeds, we'll just be specific about them. We're talking about Congresswoman Chu and Catherine Barger, our 5th District County Supervisor, and Anthony Portantino. We had a representative from Chris Holden's office. Miles Prince was there as well, who was our representative on the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. And they all echoed the same thing that you're hearing from my colleagues up here, that we should be, this solar array project really should stand as an exemplar for what cities can do, not just to address climate change, but to save money, to help the bottom line in city finances. So on every level, we were very proud to hear that from other people, and we hope that if cities come to us, we hope to be able to share our experiences with them and encourage them to embark on similar projects. Then I went to Earth Day, and I saw most of you guys there, and I spent 2 hours going to those 18 booths. And when 2 hours was up, I thought it had been 20 minutes. Absolutely fascinating exhibits there. I wish I had more time to talk about it, but Councilmember Parker's brought up one that really caught my eye, and I've since discussed it with City Manager Reynoso. They had a commercial lawnmower, a heavy-duty commercial riding lawnmower, all electric, that can run 8 hours on one charge all day long. And its decibel level is 1/2 the decibel level when you're running as a gas-powered lawnmower, so it'd be quieter. It's going to use 0 gasoline, put 0 carbon in the air. And the equivalent of the cost for fuel is, we're now paying $5, $6 for gas to run a mower like that. 16 cents a gallon is the equivalent if we were charging for gas for the electricity. So the return on investment on this kind of equipment is actually competitive. It's in the ballpark with gasoline-powered equipment. So yes, I hope that by the end of the meeting we can ask to agendize a discussion of perhaps adding that in our contract with our landscaper who does the fields for us in our landscape services. Very inspiring. And by the way, Councilmember Parkhurst's son was in the band and playing bass, and it was just wonderful and marvelous entertainment. I thought he was a professional until I realized he was a high school student. And so kudos to him, Robert. Very, very impressive. Yesterday I attended the Library Board of Trustees meeting, and we had our first meeting in council chambers in a very long time because most of the commissions are back doing person-to-person meetings. And that was just a couple of facts that I thought might be very interesting and inspiring. One thing I learned is that the children's attendance in children's programs skyrocketed from 594 in February to 1,278 in March, which is unheard of. So they're obviously doing something right over at the library. Kudos to Lori Garza, our interim librarian, and her staff. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is that we're putting out a bid to get new angled parking in front of the library. The bid is going out on the 5th, and we should be in a position to review that bid here on council on May 24th. So hopefully, if everything goes well, maybe sometime this summer we'll have expanded parking out in the front of the street. I'm forgetting something. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. At the Earth Day celebration, and this was shared by Councilmember Krebs, Chief Bartlett in our fire department had an exhibit, had a booth, and we were talking about this, and he reminded me of Fire Preparedness Week, which is next week, as Councilmember Krebs put it. And I just wanted to remind you, a really big one is Monday night, right here at City Hall from 6 to 8 p.m., and that's a wildfire preparedness workshop. So any of you, anyone who's watching this, if you have concerns about how to get your home prepared for wildfire season, which is kind of year-round, but certainly kind of starts unofficially pretty soon, that would be a good place to start. Then we will have events for the rest of the week. Okay, I have some announcements, pardon me. Well, a friend of mine passed away. Her name was Nancy Walsh. She passed away on April 22nd, 2022. I just learned of it tonight, and it hit me like a heart attack. I'm going to miss her. She was our city council member from 2010 to 2013, and mayor of the city of Sierra Madre from 2013 to 2014. She was also on the senior commission. In fact, she was a moving member of the senior community commission. She was a moving force there. So it's a huge loss for the city and for us, many of us personally, and where the city is going to try to send her family flowers as soon as we can track down how to do that. But it was just I'm very sad and very sorry to have to share that with you tonight. I do want to say on a happier note, tomorrow night we are having our honors dinner. It's supposed to be attended by I think about 140 people. It'll be at 5:30 at the Hart Park House, and this is where we people who are involved in our city, volunteers and staff, get awards for their incredible conduct and activities over the course of a year. And it's those of us who've attended these before, it's actually a very, very, very inspiring event to see all the things that our staff and our private volunteers are doing to help this city. I was going to mention the Armenian Genocide, but I think Councilmember Arizmendi covered that adequately. We want everyone to understand that we're all very much in league on this issue of the Armenian Genocide and what was done to Armenians by the Ottoman Empire. Planning vacancies on public commissions, just to make an announcement. Planning Commission still has 1 expected vacancy. Community Services Commission has 2 expected vacancies, and the Library Board still has 2 anticipated vacancies. So anyone in the audience who might like to lend a helping hand, get involved in city government, plenty of opportunities there to volunteer. So I encourage you to do that with us.
Because Natural Resources, they still have two.
Do they? Natural Resources, do they have 2? Is that on the back? I think it got cut off. Oh, no, natural, it's in the same. It's in the same bullet point. You got me. Natural Resources Commission is 1 current vacancy and 1 anticipated vacancy. I'm sorry, Robert. No, you're right. You're right to call me on that. Good. And that's my report. So thank you for bearing with me. Okay. So let's move on. We now have an opportunity for members of the public to comment on non-agenda items. Hopefully, if you want to do that, we'd like to get a yellow card from you. If you haven't filled one out, you can get one in the out back or from here from the city clerk. Madam City Clerk, do you have some participants?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The first speaker is Pat Alcorn.
Good evening, Mayor Goss and council members. I was extremely disturbed at the recriminations when at the last council meeting, 2 members of the public spoke to you about the developer New Urban West. One ended her comments with "follow the money," a phrase which is usually used as a negative term for something underhanded or nefarious. The second commentator warned the council to be wary of the developer. "Don't trust them," he said. Since I have been following the Passionists, I have learned a few things. One is that they have been hoping for a housing development for at least 10 years. The first I heard about it was in 2012 or 13, when my husband Dee and I were invited to a focus group at the retreat house, asking citizens about the idea of a housing project, since they needed funds for retiring priests and to further their ministry overseas. Then in 2013, news came out, yes, a development was planned, but no details yet. Now, I can only assume that the Passionists considered many options. However, they ultimately signed a contract with New Urban West to develop their property. I don't know what's in the contract, but I know that both Urban West and Madre de la Rosa are planning to make money from the development. Money that will allow the Passionists to help their order with retirement facilities, as well as continue their work around the world. I also know they work together to allow the Passionists to continue their work that doesn't attract with the serenity of the retreat house. Hence, a 42-home development rather than the 50 to 100 homes they envisioned when we attended the focus group years ago. When New Urban West defends the project and the Passionists, it seems only prudent business practice to do so. Follow the money. Yes, they have been open and transparent about the process and planning. They are hoping to make a profit as they do so. They are following all the rules, conforming to the contract they signed with the city, and are hoping that their project will find its way to approval through the normal planning commission and finally city council process. Nothing nefarious about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alcorn.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Ed Chen.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Goss, honorable members of the council. My name is Ed Chen. I'm with Athens Services. I'm here to invite you, members of the community, to this Saturday's annual spring compost giveaway. It's at Sierra Vista Park, 9 a.m. to noon. We're very proud of our compost, and we're very happy with the turnout that we received from Sierra Madre, and we're also very happy to be at Earth Day. So again, just want to invite you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chen.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Father Clement Barron.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, council members, and administrators of the city of Sierra Madre. I'm Father Clemente Barron, Passionist of Holy Cross Province, and a member of the Madre de la Rosa Passionist community, living there with 3 other Passionist members. We are co-owners of the property of 700 North Sunnyside Avenue that includes Madre de la Rosa Passionist Retreat Center. And since all Passionists take a vow of poverty, our ownership of our property takes a different form, but we still are the legal owners, like generations of vowed Passionists before us since 1924 when we bought it. I'm sure that we all will agree that we have the same rights under our Constitution to use or dispose of our property as we see fit in accordance with state and city regulations. I'm respectfully asking the city residents to consider the meadow projects in that light. If we are not asking the city to rezone our entire land, but only a smaller section of it. Supporters of Stop the Housing Project ballot initiative want to rezone the entire property, which would include the retreat center to the city's most restrictive zoning category at the Planning Commission April the 7th a leader and supporter of the proposed initiative, said that this will not harm Madre de la Rosa, but this is not true. By rezoning the entire property, the initiative makes the retreat center portion a non-conforming use and thus requires to hold city-wide election every time we want to make even a modest change to use our property. This would unfairly treat us more and would treat us more harshly than any other property owner in the city, who can simply would go before the city for their property improvements. The high costs and great risks involved in being forced to hold a new ballot initiative anytime we need to make a change effectively revokes our property rights. I think that everyone would think twice before forcing a rezoning of all of the property we own. Madre de la Rosa is a private property, and we wish to keep that under its current zoning. Why would any of us want to live in a city where a property can be suddenly rezoned just because its neighbors want us to rezone it? For a century, the Passionists of Holy Cross Province have been good neighbors to the city of Sierra Madre and its residents. With the Meadows at Bailey Canyon proposal, we and our development partner are following the rules and procedures. We trust our city leaders and managers to do right by their fiduciary responsibility. We trust our neighbors to be good neighbors, willing to let us do with our property what other Sierra Madre residents have done so many times before.
Father, could you please wrap it up?
Buy land, build on it, and sell it as long as we follow the procedures. We thank you very much for considering this proposal.
Thank you, Father.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Alex Arietta.
Good evening. First, I want to talk about the water shortage situation. There's just a communication that came out today announcing that the Metropolitan Water District is declaring a severe water shortage across Southern California. It's going to impact 18 million customers. Restrictions are being ordered today, effective today. And again, they expect it to impact 18 million customers across Southern California. The water levels are so much more significant and worse off than they were several years ago when the city declared the last water moratorium. So I bring that up because I think it's critical that the city council come up to speed on that and declare a water moratorium as quickly as possible so they can deal with this appropriately. Second issue, I do want to talk about the next Planning Commission meeting scheduled for next Thursday, May 5th. I strongly recommend, suggest, and request that the meeting be held at the middle school as opposed to gallery here. Anyone who was here at the last Planning Commission meeting and saw all the significant majority of out-of-towners that New Urban West brought in to show support for the project filled up the room such that actual Sierra Madre residents had to sit in a gallery or outside. Completely unacceptable. So to try to avoid that, would ask that the meeting be held at the middle school. Finally, I think that it's important to talk about the process that's been flowing so far with the middle school, with this project and New Urban West. I've been very vocal about this initiative that is underway. It will in no way impact the monastery's current ability to provide the current services they are providing. So there's a lot of misinformation being provided to the city, which is just not factual or true. Secondarily, I want to give some examples of everything that New Urban West has been doing to try to push this project through. Here's a card that was from February, paid by New Urban West, talking about the initiative. Here's another flyer that just went out this coming weekend around Sierra Madre Neighbors for Fairness, paid for by New Urban West, committee major funding from New Urban West. I doubt this was a very organically formed committee. Another letter from one of the fathers talking about the initiative, talking about the project, paid for by New Urban West. A flyer by Sosby Real Estate, who was partnered and hired by New Urban West to have an open house at the Sierra Madre Women's Club in March to talk about selling homes for a project that has not been approved. And I think that is the height of hubris, disrespect to this governing body, disrespect to the Planning Commission, who have not even begun to debate this project. And here they are engaging with a realtor to pre-sell these homes. And this is just indicative of why.
Could you wrap it up, please?
Indicative, the last person had 3.5 minutes. This
And
is
I asked him to
indicative.
wrap it up, and I'm asking you to wrap it up.
This is indicative of why no one in this city trusts New Urban West with this project and how it's been unfolding so far and how we continue to see it unfold. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Kathleen Coyne.
Good evening. I just have a quick comment. I was at the last Planning Commission, and it was mentioned by one of the commissioners that he has never been on the property up at Mata del Rosa. I think that's a disservice. Like Pat said, this project has been underway since 2012, and I think this commissioner has been on the commission for a while. So I just think, it's a disservice to the city, and if the Planning Commission is advising you, they should be aware of what's going on in more detail. That's my comment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Coyne.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Fire Chief Bartlett.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the plugs earlier on our wildlife community preparedness upcoming events. But if you would indulge me just for a brief moment, just to kind of highlight the events themselves and hopefully draw some more attraction to some participants. Basically, this funding for the project is provided by the California State of Forestry and Fire Protection's Fire Prevention Program as part of the California Climate Investments Program. So it's going to be a 2-year funded program that we're going to be trying to run. But Saturday, May 7th, is National Wildfire Community Preparedness Day, as mentioned before, and to celebrate and encourage the community to participate on the important initiative, the fire department has scheduled 2 events for next week. Monday, May 2nd, here in the council chambers, we will be hosting a Get Wildfire Ready educational workshop from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And again, that's open to everybody. We will have the fortune of retired Los Angeles County firefighter Forester Jay Lopez, who also helped us with the Conservation Corps project last year. He'll be our main speaker, and he's going to be talking basically about defensible space zones, and particularly the new Zone 0, which is being introduced. We want to talk about that, as well as fire-safe landscaping recommendations. And we are also looking to have a representative from Southern California Edison to be talking about their current wildfire mitigations that they're taking efforts on. We'll be providing an interactive experience, opportunities for question and answers, and the workshop is going to be kind of a little bit different than we've done in the past, especially for those that have attended those in virtual setting. The event will be a helpful tool to prepare residents for our upcoming Smart Chipper and Green Waste Green Waste Day scheduled for Saturday, May 7th, which is actually the Wildfire Community Preparedness Day. And for that, we're going to be having open registration for those that want to participate for a free curbside vegetation hauling and chipping services. And you can actually register online, and we do have, as been seen before, we do have these available in the back here for those that are interested, and we should still have them on the city's website. But we welcome everybody to register for that. And if you have any questions, please give us a call at the fire department, and we'd love to see everybody out for the events. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, there were no other speaker cards submitted.
Did we receive any emails?
No emails were submitted on this or any other topic.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just two quick questions on all the speakers, if I may.
sure.
So one, Chief Bartlett, did I hear you correctly when you said that the event next week is from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. here in council chambers?
That's quite an event.
Apparently, everybody heard that, so,
I just want to give you a chance to correct it.
I appreciate that very much, and so I will retract that, the earlier times. It'll be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., so a 2-hour event.
Looking forward to the sleepover.
We might try something in the future, but yes, thank you for that opportunity to correct that. Any further questions, if I may?
Not for you, but this one
Thank you.
for Attorney Gargosian. So, what's the ability for the city to be able to declare a water moratorium? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. I thought we've heard this before, but I just wanted to check.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. A water moratorium may be imposed, but because of the Housing Crisis Act, certain findings need to be made. It's not as easy as it was in the past to impose a water moratorium. Further, after we make those findings need to be approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Only then will the water moratorium take effect. At this point, I think we've spoken to City Manager Reynoso about it. I know we've had the conversation with former City Manager England, and at this point, the city is unable to make the required findings to impose a water moratorium.
Is that it? I wanted to ask City Manager with the point about whether or not our planning commissioners have been up to the Meadows site. Could you inform the public about the tours that are being conducted?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have 3 scheduled tours beginning next week that will involve both the Planning Commission and the City Council at different times to take tours of the proposed project.
Thank you. Hopefully that addresses your question, Mrs. Coyne. Okay, let's move on to our presentations, and we have our friends from the Senior Community Commission here, and they're going to give us their annual presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and City Staff and City Manager. My name is Pat Holland. I'm the current chair of the Senior Community Commission, and this is Jackie Pergola, who will also come up and talk a little bit about what's going on with the commission. But before I do that, Mayor, I was shocked to hear Nancy passing away. Jackie and I just met with her a couple months ago to go over the county surplus donation program because she wanted to step aside. So we wanted to continue with it because it brings in a lot of money for the seniors. And we met with her for at least a couple hours, and she was going to go in for another surgery. And we got all the information we needed, and now it's starting to go back to where it was, where we can get involved with the senior donation program with the county. So she is definitely going to be missed, and she was a driving force with the commission. She did this on her own with the senior donation program with the county after she left the commission and after she left the council. So she was doing this on her own completely, and we thanked her every year when we got a check for $30,000, $50,000, $17,000. We thanked her immensely for all the work she did. So we're going to miss her, and very sorry to hear of her passing. As I mentioned, Jackie is also a member of the commission, but we also have some other members of the commission here present. They're sitting in the back because they make too much noise in their old years. But we do have Anita Thompson, she's the vice chair, Patricia Kroc, Marlene Enmark, and Sally Olson. Sally has been serving on the commission for the past 6 years, and this is her final swan song. June will be her last month. She's served her 2 terms, her 6 years, and I wanted to publicly recognize her because she has done a lot for the commission, a lot for the city, and especially a lot for the seniors in our community. So thank you, Sally, very much. We're here to give you an update on what the Senior Commission has accomplished and will accomplish during this coming year. You should have with you, you should have the senior newsletter, April senior newsletter. and also a list of the activities that the Senior Commission participates in, which are many. The purpose of the Commission is we're responsible for advising the welfare and well-being of older Sierra Madreans by defining their needs, locating and publicizing available resources, and coordinating and initiating services and opportunities for them. The Commission tries to improve and enhance the quality of older residents throughout the community. We meet on the first Thursday of every month at 3 p.m. in council chambers unless we're instructed to have a virtual meeting. We also want to thank the Community Service Department staff for everything they do for us and the city. They put a lot of time and effort into making everything work as efficiently as possible. And those people are Lauren Hines, Rosemary Garcia, and Rebecca Silva Barone. And they are definitely shorthanded since we've lost Clarissa Lowe this last year. So they're working their rear ends off. They are the heart and the soul of making the senior activities happen, and we thank all of them for that. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jackie, and she'll give you some of the activities that we've been doing this past year. Jackie?
Good evening, Mayor Goss and City Council members. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And I'm not going to list all of the activities since you have your handout, but we have many, many. But I do want to let you know what we have been doing since we met last in June 2021 in Memorial Park. Even though we had the pandemic going on this last couple of years, we were able to subsidize the nutrition program for the seniors in the amount of $88,000 and serving over 10,000 families in the community. We get most of the funding through the LA County Surplus Donation Program, and without our participation in that program, we would not be able to do what we do for the seniors in our wonderful community. Just this past month, we received a check in the amount of $78,000. So it is vital to keep this program. And we sat with Nancy Walsh, and she presented us this check. She will be sorely missed. And she spent many years working on this program, and we want to keep it alive for the seniors of Sierra Madre. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. We had also, in December, we had the first concert, and that was held with Skinny Ties. There were about 70 or 75 people in attendance, and it was so cold, but everybody stayed the entire evening. Our senior holiday luncheon on December 16th at the Hart Park House was sold out. It was catered by Nanos, which was great. We had bingo and door prizes, and everybody had a good time. We have also received a $500 donation from James MacArthur, who is the executor of the Beth Kelly Trust, who requested in her trust that $500 be donated to the senior program, which was very, very nice of her. We are in the process of updating our senior resource guide. It has been 3 years since we did it, and of course with the pandemic and all, many things have changed during that time, so that will be ready soon. And I would like to give this back to Pat Holland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pergola.
Thank you, Jackie. We are proceeding with honoring the Older American of the Year award for Sierra Madre, which we haven't done the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And this year we're going to do something totally different that it's never been done before. We're going to honor all the seniors in the city of Sierra Madre. And we're going to have a open house reception over at the Hart Park House. And it's a great honor to be able to honor all the seniors in our community. And it'll take place on June 15th from 4:30 to 8:30. As I said, it'll be a reception, an open house. It won't be a formal sit-down type of thing. It'll be free. Thanks for the donation program that we participate in. And it'll be catered and with libations. So I know some of us will be glad to hear that.
What are you trying to say, Mr. Hall?
I know. I may have to bring something. We are planning on having the yearly yard sale, which is always a lot of fun. And this year we're going to have it over in Memorial Park instead of over at Sierra Vista Park. The date was set, but it had to be changed. But it'll be sometime this summer, and it starts at 8 o'clock till noon. So save the date, and we'll have coffee, donuts, and water for $1. We'll be having our senior rock concert on Sunday, July 10th. The band is going to be named at a later date, probably after we meet this coming month. We're hoping to have our monthly senior excursions resumed sometime in the fall. We haven't had those since the pandemic, and people have been really missing those. In the senior newsletter, which you have in front of you, there's an article about a new program called Get Set Up, which is partnered with our library. And it's a great resource. I got on it last couple weeks ago, and I learned a lot of things from just the session I sat through. But it's for seniors and others, not just the seniors, in providing virtual classes on just about everything. And I mean, they have everything. It's a cross-country type of virtual setup. And it is free if you have a library card from Sierra Madre. Also in the newsletter is published the paramedic program with our city, just to give the seniors more information on what's available out there and what is available to them. And the staff is continuing to meet with the YWCA to determine when and if we can resume the daily lunch program, which the YWCA stopped when the pandemic started. But in the meantime, we've teamed up with Madre de la Rosa, and we're able to still have lunches distributed on Thursdays only at 12 noon. So Madre de la Rosa is still providing those luncheons on Thursdays. So I want to thank Councilmember Krebs for being our representative last year, and I want to welcome Councilmember Ed Garcia for joining us in our new venture for this year. So thank you both very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Very inspiring information. Would anyone in the council like to comment? Okay, moving right along, we have another presentation from Technology Manager Milan on the state of our city's cybersecurity.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, it's a pleasure to be in front of you tonight. I want to take the opportunity to thank Council Member Krebs, who initially brought up the discussion of cybersecurity. IT doesn't get a lot of opportunities to be in front of Council, and certainly I think we've done a lot of great work in this area, and I'm happy to bring that to you tonight. Right, so first the purpose and the scope of the presentation. What I'd like to do tonight is introduce the concept of cybersecurity and why it's important. Talk very briefly about best practices and strategies. I'll also like to mention where we are today, how far has Sierra Madre come, and where we are headed in the future. And I want to highlight that through the entire presentation, I've been very careful about sharing data or information about our protection that could compromise security in itself. So just keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. All right, so importance of security and why it's important today and why it's getting worse. What we've noticed in the IT field is that the number of attacks are increasing, and it's been made worse by the recent conflict in Russia and Ukraine. What we've seen is quite a dramatic spike in traffic, really at all levels. Specifically at Sierra Madre, when we monitor our firewalls, we can see the attempts, and we have seen increased traffic there. I'd also like to mention that the sophistication of the threats is getting more and more intelligent, and it's a sort of digital arms race where in the past, bad actors would canvass a network for a couple of days and then attack. Now it seems that bad actors can sit on your network for months and look for places to attack, sometimes target the backup structures that you have for backup and disaster recovery. So a lot of the attacks are becoming ever more sophisticated. As you know, technology is critical to the operation of any organization, and downtime can be very costly. For small organizations, organization could be tens of thousands of dollars. For a larger organization, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you know, it's important to note that there is a huge economic incentive for the bad guys these days, because they can run off with you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And with the advent of cryptocurrencies, it makes it so much easier to pay the ransom and stay completely anonymous. So it's one of those things where we're noticing that this may be somewhat related to the increase of attacks. So how does IT stay current, and how are we involved with other organizations to make sure that we're not falling behind the curve, so to speak? First, I'd like to mention that I am a member, specifically a member of the board of the Municipal Information Systems Association of California, short MISAC. And this is an organization with about 500 member cities. More, it may actually be higher by this point, but we discuss everything IT related. We have an annual conference every year, and it's not surprising that you know, one of the most talked about and discussed topics are security at these conferences. If you look at all the different avenues of information and presentations that we have, you go to a security presentation and everybody is attending those presentations. There's not an empty seat, standing room only for security. Other resources, Council Member Krebs brought up Cal OES, and we are signed up for Cal OES and their alerts. The latest alert that came out was this morning, and it's generally a brief of all the threats that are known and current. And they also offer other resources with other agencies. There's also NIST and CIS and ISAC. These are all resources that we can tap into, either for information or frameworks to fortify our response to any cybersecurity threats. And in this slide, this is a general overview of all the items that organizations will look at in order to improve their cybersecurity envelope. There's a lot of discussion about what's new and emerging, but these are the tried and true solutions that are in place today. And I'll talk about each of these in the next slide as it pertains to the city of Sierra Madre. All right, so where are we today, and what have we done? The first item here is the next generation firewalls, and I'd like to highlight two specific projects. First, perhaps I'll start with the city library. The city library was the very first next generation firewall that we deployed, potential number, I want to say 3 years ago. And you know, it's a tricky network because there's a private network for staff and a public network for the public. And when I first got here, those networks were intermingled. So the first firewall was to separate those traffics logically. What we've done recently, and Lori Garza is very aware of the efforts that went into this, is we now have physical separation. So we have two firewalls, one dedicated for the private side and one dedicated to the public side, allowing us to completely segregate the traffic and avoid any intrusions and any issues between the two networks, which is, I would consider a great exercise and a great effort. The other firewall that I'd like to talk about specifically, and this is a big one, is the water utility. Water utility is under a lot of scrutiny because of recent hacks that have happened in the last year. Obviously, there's a huge public safety concern with our water utility and our SCADA operations. And I would say that as far as a network, NPD is under this category as well, but this is the highest level of security that we can have. And we've done some really great things like segmenting our network so that if any piece of it becomes compromised, it does not spread throughout We've done multi-factor authentication for any remote and VPN accesses, you know, and on and on and on. I'm very proud of the work we've done at the Yard, and it's now our gold standard for network deployment, and we hope to specifically work on segmentation, some of these other you know, developments throughout the rest of the organization. The next item is next generation endpoint security, and this is your basic virus programs that detect if something gets past our firewall or is downloaded by a user. Antivirus will catch the threat, analyze it, and quarantine it. What makes this next generation is that we have a sort of digital dashboard that actively alerts us from a global standpoint of any threats throughout the entire organization. And this is a cloud-based solution, which makes it much harder to take down should a threat actually take hold of any part of our network. And this digital dashboard was revamped by the provider to provide almost an incident response command center, which we were very happy about. And it's kind of our last line of defense at the desktop level. Obviously, we also keep up to date on our Windows operating systems. One of the easiest way to gain access to a network or a computer system is simply by having outdated software. Once a software becomes end of life, for example, Microsoft will stop updating and patching holes in the software. And this is why it's so important to stay on top of the latest operating systems throughout. And then virtual server environment, you wouldn't think this is related to security, but what this allows us to do is that if there was a security event, a virtual server environment allows us to quickly spin up or ramp up new servers, new platforms that would mitigate the downtime that should an event happen. So it's part of the mitigation plan, but the speed at which we could restore from backup on a virtual environment just makes it so that downtime is greatly minimized. And then you know, speaking of backups, you know, we do back up all of our infrastructure, but I want to highlight one key and important difference in the way that we back up our items. We not only do local backups with servers in-house, but all of that information is also air-gapped and backed up on the cloud. That is to say that if our local backups became compromised, we would still have the ability to restore from the cloud. Obviously, there's a little bit of a delay in terms of the restore going from a cloud network, but it ensures that no matter what happens internally, we have another way to restore our critical databases and information. And then lastly, you know, we know that the weakest link in any security system ends up being the end user, and so we run phishing simulations in order to get some metrics and information about who's clicking the most, and then those who end up clicking are politely invited to attend security training to hopefully improve that click rate in the future. And I'm happy to report that you know, when we first started doing this, the click rate was, I would say, 15 to 20% in the early days. We are down to maybe 5 to 10%. And one thing I'd like to note as well is that even though you might think, well, I wouldn't fall for these types of scams myself, it can happen to anyone. And we also have levels of complexity of these phishing attempts where we can make a very simple one that 99% of folks will catch, or very complex ones that even IT people could fall for. So you know, we scan at all levels, and this is something that's been incredibly useful to us in preventing you know, an attack from taking place. So in this list, I'm talking about future improvements, and some of these are certainly aspirations, and I'll talk briefly about a couple here. The automated cybersecurity incident response, basically what this is a set of rules or algorithms that if an event is caught, is automatically executed without any human or user input. That means that if something happened in the middle of the night, our systems would know what to do and get something quarantined or air-gapped so that it couldn't do any more damage until IT could actually take action. And this is something that's pretty advanced. We're talking about AI and neural nets that would allow us to do something like this. And this is really cutting edge. And I'll also mention micro-segmentation. As I mentioned previously, at the yard, we've done network segmentation. Micro-segmentation takes it one step further, where each device becomes literally its own network. So that if a virus enters or a threat enters that device, it is air-gapped completely from everything else. So no more than one computer would be infected. And then I'll also mention the zero trust model, which is basically the idea that access is validated on a regular basis. So whether it's internal or external users, a zero trust model basically says that we are constantly checking that folks or devices for that matter, that could have access, should have access on a very regular, consistent basis. And then lastly, SIEM, or Managed Security Provider. This is one step beyond our command center, where we're actively managing threats. And this is something that larger organizations have the funding for and the staff for. But I imagine as this is more developed, it would become accessible to smaller agencies like us. And I believe that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Very informative report. I'm sure we have some follow-up questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Mindy.
I don't have questions necessarily. I probably didn't understand a quarter of that, but I'm very grateful that our team has taken precautions, and I think there was a heightened awareness, especially with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and the notifications that we receive on a regular basis. And reassuring also to hear what's with our water system, and I can understand, I think, the segmentation piece of it. And I also just wanted to commend our staff. And in the work that I'm doing now, I'm learning how much numerous cities across the country are not being able to keep in-house IT people. And there's such a value to that, whether it's the organizational knowledge, institutional knowledge, and expertise. So I want to thank the both of you. And I also want to thank Oscar on a regular basis. I'm probably messaging him, which I'm going to give you my computer in just a moment, because it's not recognizing my new password. And also, it's true. So it's very safe.
Did you click a phishing email?
It's very safe. And I told Oscar that he could use me as an example. I feel like I'm pretty good on the phishing scams, and I will forward it to them, and they're like, thanks, delete, and maybe that's why I haven't had to take these special classes. But I recently did receive one that I really did click through, and it seemed so legitimate to me, and Oscar was kind enough to say, no, it's okay. But it wasn't okay. But I think it just keeps us on alert as to what we are looking through, because our network is vulnerable like anyone else's is. So thank you for the work that you do. And I am really going to give you my laptop.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, Oscar and Christian, obviously great work by you guys. I haven't had to do two-factor authentication through the city, but I have to do it with my other job, and I'll pledge not to be so annoyed with it, because I now have a better understanding of why it's so important. Just one thing, vernacular-wise, and I think I picked up on it within context of your presentation, which was great, by the way, but could you define to us what air-gapped is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize for the esoteric reference. Air-gapped basically means to completely segregate from every other network or resource. So you're essentially disconnecting a device from everything else.
Puts it in a bubble, okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
It puts it in a bubble, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I mean, that was beyond my expectation when I asked for an update. I have to say that I feel much more secure myself knowing that you're on the task, and thank you for highlighting the water utility, because that was of particular concern, and I think the priority that you give that is, seems above and beyond. And I assume in terms of some of the aspirational or sort of future-looking items, that those things get prioritized based on, which of our systems, which of our departments, are sort of high priority, kind of on a waterfall basis. So to the extent that there was something cutting edge that, may be cost prohibitive, we would look at it for, things that are high risk, high priority, and then, sort of evaluated on that basis.
Certainly. I'll make one comment that I think is relevant. Perhaps the highest standard is at the police department because of the access that we have to the Department of Justice and other sensitive databases and information. And the bar there is pretty high. So what I've tried to do with Christian's help, of course, is to have that high bar throughout the organization. So if we can do it there with all the complexities, we can certainly strive to do it everywhere else.
That's great. Thank you.
So once again, this is another example of Sierra Madre punching above its weight, with you being on the board of MISAC. So thank you for taking on that additional challenge and taking on that leadership role. I appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. So, we have seen historically, and even as recently as, I think it was the fall, where there's been blackmail situations. There's a blackmail attempt on or not attempt, I think it was successful on the East Coast with the natural gas system. What would be our response to a blackmail a situation where they get control of our system?
That's a really good question.
And if you can't answer specifically because of that, then I understand.
I'll give you the answer that I can present in public. I think the first thought that I have is that, when it comes to cybersecurity, I think the general consensus of the security community is that you make a determination of whether or not you would pay the ransom ahead of time, before you have an incident, so that you're better prepared with that response. And the recommended, industry-wide recommended consideration is to not pay the ransom, because that only incentivizes bad actors from continuing to do what they do. That said, if we were in that situation, I feel fairly confident that we would be able to restore from backup, even if it was in a limited sense. Let's say it was full failure. We have enough contingencies in place, and we've done enough planning ahead of time where we would be able to restore, again, as I mentioned, from cloud backups if we needed to bring services back online.
Thank you. Your system is always is only as strong as its weakest link, as the saying is. And so, in my mind, I'm trying to think of what those weak links are. So I assume you have done scenarios where things like systems are rebooted, and sometimes when you reboot, you can get access, or in those connections, like the connection to DOJ. So I assume that you have done a threat assessment of all of these and looking at where those places are that are the non-standard events that could then introduce threats and introduce risks to our organization.
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to change a little bit the direction that you went. It is my strong belief that the weakest link that we have now, based on the last 4 or 5 years, at this point is staff. It's the clicks, and to the extent that we certainly test all the systems that we can, and I mean, certainly with backups, you have to test backups because you don't want to find out they're not working when you need them the most. So that is absolutely done. And to the extent that we review the firewalls regularly, I mean, I truly wish we had more time to do that kind of stuff with just 2 staff members. But to the extent that we prioritize and do our best, we certainly do that. But it goes back to staff. You know, we're putting a huge emphasis on training, on phishing our own staff. And it is getting better, but it's not 100%. And I think aspirationally, I would want that to be 100% in the near future.
It seems to me that you talked about some type of segmentation and then aspirationally micro-segmentation. So if there's segmentation or micro-segmentation, there's no link, right? These things are segmented, therefore there's no weak link to happen because they're not linked together. Right?
Correct. If we could achieve micro-segmentation, the aspirationally, that computer would remain in its own island and not capable of infecting other computers.
That's great.
That's correct.
So I'll just finish and put a challenge to my fellow council members, is that there is a way you know there is a message is from Oscar. So if you look at any message from Oscar, you take a close look at it, you'll know it's from him, and I'm going to leave it at that and let you try to figure it out.
That's an excellent point, sir.
And so now the pressure's on us.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
I already failed.
Thank you for your time.
IT Manager Milan, outstanding report, very impressive, and I agree with my colleagues. I feel a lot better about the subject now that I've heard you talk about it. So, good work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
She's bringing it over now.
Okay, so, moving right along, that brings us to our consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, would you mind reviewing the items in the consent agenda, please?
Mr. Mayor, are we postponing the public safety?
Oh, wait a minute. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Chief Armelin was unable to perform it today. He'll be back in the next meeting for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before the City Council this evening are 5 items on the consent calendar for consideration. Consent item A is consideration of Resolution 22-18, approving certain demands. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 22-18, approving the payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $779,175.77. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $7,324.18, and additionally payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $432,667.69, and this is for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. Consent item B is the second reading of Ordinance 1453. That's adding Chapter 6.10, Feeding of Wildlife Prohibited, to Title 6, Animals, and amending Section 8.16.010, Property Maintenance dash Nuisances, of Chapter 8.16, Site Nuisances, of Title 8, Health and Safety of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code, to prohibit the feeding of certain wildlife. And it is recommended that the City Council conduct a second reading and adopt Ordinance 1453 by title only and waive further reading. Consent item C is the equipment transfer from the City of Monrovia to the City of Sierra Madre. It is recommended that the City Council approve the equipment transfer agreement with the City of Monrovia and authorize the city manager or his designee to accept and expend any additional 2022 State Homeland Security Grant Program funds that may become available and execute the necessary subrecipient agreement. Consent item D is the declaration of city-owned vehicles and equipment to be surplused, and it is recommended that the City Council declare the vehicles and equipment listed in the agenda report to be surplused and approved at the disposal and approve the disposal of the items. And lastly, consent item E is a general plan annual progress report, and it is recommended that City Council receive and file this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Let's go from top to bottom, item by item, to see if there are questions from council for staff. Item number A. Item B.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Can you remind me what the change was? There was a minor change that was made to it, and I think Councilmember Krebs was the one that suggested it.
In item B?
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah.
I think it had to do with making it clear that certain of the exceptions didn't swallow the the actual rule. It was, I think we were allowing certain uses.
That's right.
But they were gonna be modified by the restrictions. You know, like if you were gonna have a fruit tree, you still had to
Right.
be responsible for cleaning up the fruit that
But,
fell
yeah,
on the
but
ground.
you could have the fruit tree, it wasn't banned, okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Item C,
Oh, sorry, I have a question about that.
please.
I don't know if this is a question, for city manager. What is the intended use of the equipment that we're getting from Monrovia?
It is for fire training, but I believe, Chief is here and he can expand.
Thank you for that opportunity to answer this. Actually, it's a great opportunity for us. We are looking to receive what is referred to as a fireground survival trailer, which will enhance our training abilities. It's actually a trailer that is from the International Association of Firefighters, and it's based around fireground survival program where firefighters train for Mayday situations, which we all hope we never have. The trailer, it comes with a lot of props that are included in it and attached to it, and each one of those props is based off the death of a firefighter and a scenario that they got into. So we learn from our experiences, and we hope to never repeat them, but we can train to the known and hopefully prevent that from happening. So this is it's actually a regional resource for the fire departments. There are a few of them within the LA County, within the region, and Monrovia has had it before, is currently the recipient of it, but with their regional training tower, they're kind of duplicated on efforts, so they were gracious enough to offer it up, and I feel it was a great opportunity for us, and we can in turn have regional agencies also join in on the training. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Other questions on item C? Item D. Item E. No. Okay, we're good, so let's open this up for public comment on any item in the consent agenda. Okay, hearing none, I'll bring this back to council. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And it is approved. And that moves us on to the discussion of the Richardson House and Lizzie's Trail Inn and the state of the infrastructure associated with them.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I have a report for you that requires no council action. This is a receive and file report. City of Sierra Madre owns 2 museums and the property they are located on. The Sierra Madre Historical Society operates the historic buildings under a 25-year lease. The lease is due for renewal in March of 2026. The Historical Society maintains the interior at their expense, and the city is responsible for the structural and exterior of the buildings. Staff met with Leslie Ziff, president of the Historical Society, and board member John Capocha at the museums. At the museum, staff completed an assessment to identify the infrastructure items that are a high priority to preserve the buildings. The following priorities were determined at that meeting with the Historical Society members. So if I can draw your attention to the pictures. The buildings, the Richardson House, according to the sign, was built in 1890, and Lizzie's Trail Inn was built in 1900. And I say that because Ms. Ziff let me know that those dates might not be correct. And we're not sure if they were moved to those locations and at what time they were moved. The Richardson House have had numerous repairs in the past years. They've made wood repairs to the floor and the structure of the building, the outside and the inside. They have a fresh paint on the inside and outside. Windows operate now. They were sealed shut with paint for over the years. They've also rebuilt the deck on the outside and the railing around the deck. So as you can see in the picture, it looks very nice up there from the outside. Lizzie's Trail Inn is more rustic, and it's kept that way. It's another beautiful building. Great uses for a museum. They have it open on Saturdays mainly, with docents there to tell you stories about the Lizzie's Trail Inn and Lizzie. It too has also had numerous repairs. They've repaired the electrical, but yet they left the old tube and wire there to show you how it was wired in the old days. They've painted, and the city has done some foundation work at that and Lizzie's Trail Inn. What we have with Lizzie's Trail, one of the deficiencies, there's a beautiful 100-plus-year-old oak. Can't tell if that oak was there before the building or if that oak was planted after the building. But today they try to share the same space. One of the problems with that is, if you could see right in here, the oak is touching the building. I don't want to say it's leaning on the building, because if it was leaning, that building would have given way a long time ago. So the oak is growing in that direction and actually growing in girth. So now it's pushing that building a little bit. There's about a 2-inch to 3-inch gap at the top, which is causing the wall to lean. And when it rains and gets wet, the water now can intrude through that wall and the windows there, which also affects the roof area in that area too, and cause some leaking there too. So what staff and the Historical Society are considering is getting an arborist to come tell us the viability of the oak tree, which I think is in great shape and in good health, but I'm not an arborist. So we'll get their opinion to see what we can do to allow both structures to be there. If that limb does need to be removed, the arborist will inform us of that, or if the whole tree does have to go, if it's becoming the end of its life, and that's the suggestion that we would bring back that to council for that decision. That's not one I would like to make, but if it is the limb, it is kind of a tree that on the south side of the tree, I don't know if we can see that from this picture, it's kind of barren on that south side. There was a limb there years ago that was removed, or it fell, I don't know. But I do know that Gary Anderson, the late Gary Anderson, he adopted that tree years and years ago, and he used to come and maintain that tree and trim it a lot for the city and for the Historical Society. It doesn't get that kind of attention today, though. Okay, over to the Richardson House. This is the back shed portion, which includes an area that the kitchen used to be in. This is a view from the east, looking towards Lizzie's. The magnificent oak is in the background. This is the area of concern for the Richardson House. This was built with the house, or after the house, but it's built on the ground. There's not much foundation to it. There is some added foundation in the back. But it is an area of concern, and it is not used by the Historical Society at this time. It can be, but it is not. And I say can be if we fixed it up and made it safe for them to be back there. This is another view of that back shed. As you can see, in the old days, it made good access to the back door of Lizzie's for access. She can bring her moonshine from the back of the shed over to the building, or people can sneak out of the back of Lizzie's if they had to. This is the inside of that back area. This is the kitchen area and the area where she had her still. So it's the first addition to the building there, and this is the area that we think can be rebuilt and made to look period with the rest of the building, and be useful for the Historical Society and the value of the building. This is that extension of the shed. That is an area that's not too viable. It may take more than what we want to do to rebuild it, but that will be determined when we have do an evaluation of the building to see if it's worth doing. So I just did another picture of the park because it is a beautiful setting up there, and I took this on Monday, and it was a really nice day. Yeah, so it is at Mount Wilson Trail Park. They're open on Saturdays, and the Historical Society is there to give viewings. So I have both the Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society and staff agree the items listed in the staff report are the most pressing issues to preserve and improve the museums. Staff will prioritize the needed improvements for design, construction, with a recommendation to make the necessary repairs to both buildings in fiscal year 22-23. Staff recommends the City Council receive and file this report, and I'm here for any questions, and Leslie Ziff is in the audience for any questions also.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What would it take to refurbish the still and consider it a revenue opportunity for fundraising purposes?
You know, I'd have to call my buddies on that Moonshiners commercial to see where I can get an old one at. Not commercial,
Okay.
television show.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Any questions?
Just a quick,
Go ahead.
just a quick question. Thank you for the report. I know this is overdue, and we had talked about discussing this at some point. Well, you know, given that we're trying to look at priorities and we're looking at 2022, 2023 budget, how soon, like what kind of timeline are we looking at for an arborist to come out and to do an assessment of the kitchen area and to see if we can redo that?
Well, the arborist report is an easy one. The rest of it isn't quite so easy. I was informed by Director Gonzalez that we may have to do a historic review of the buildings, even though we do know how historic it is. But they can give us some criteria of what we can and can't do to that building. So that may take time, and then it would have to go to the Planning Commission because of the historic significance of the building. So it could take a long time. I don't know how long it would take. And then funding for it. In the staff report, I put down that we would look to put something in the CIP budget to hopefully be able to take care of it. But at this point, we're really guessing. I don't know how to remodel a building of this significance.
So it could take a long time.
It could, but
okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So on slide 7, where you've got the back shed, what's the date of the back shed? When was that? Do we know about when that was built? You said it was the second addition to the building. 1920s. Got it. Okay, the 1920s. In the staff report, you have about $70,000 to complete the necessary improvements. What are the improvements that you're looking for initially in that? Is that going to cover everything we've talked about here, or is there more beyond that 70,000?
The 70,000 is really the earmarked money we were going to look to try and put in the budget for this coming year. We're not sure if that's enough for it. It would be enough to help Lizzie's for sure with the tree, unless we're moving the whole building. It could be a lot more, but the arborist is an easy one. The architect's going to be a little bit harder to research to find, because we will want one that has some historic significance to their practice also.
So that's a placeholder right now.
It's really a placeholder that we were going to be asking for the capital improvement projects.
And so, will the arborist have any experience at kind of the interface between trees and buildings? Like, we can't be the only city that has ever had to deal with an oak tree coming into a building. Are there people out there with expertise on creative ways to do things. I mean, the tree is growing in girth. It's just like, can you train a tree like you train a dog? Can you train it to grow on the other side or, at the upper side? Like, I'm trying to think, like, I'd like to make sure we know all our options going in.
Yeah.
And not do like, hopefully we don't have to do the most expensive one of moving the building back and then another decade move the building back and, the tree's chasing the building.
It's funny you use the dog analogy because you can't teach old dogs new tricks. So I don't think you can train that tree to grow any different. But arborist, along with a historic architect, I believe we can come up with a solution for the two to live in the same space.
Great.
Or next to each other.
Thank you.
I've seen, I'm sure you have too, oak trees here in town where you have massive limbs being supported by beams or steel pillars.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that might be in the mix too if we're trying to save the tree and the building.
That really comes in effect when you're having an uprooting issue or you're having a splitting issue, and we're not having either one of those with this tree. That's why I'm really determining that the tree is just growing in this way. And as it's there, it'll grow in girth, and that's really what's starting to push on the building now. It's not like coming down. If it was coming down, we would see a lot more uplifting in the dirt around it and the roots. But they cable trees, when you start to see rotting in the V's of a tree or something, they'll cable them to each other so that it holds them up. I don't see that in this tree at this point.
Other questions?
Thank you, Director Semino. So with Lizzie's, when we're talking about the oak tree, when we did our tours up there a few months back, I believe there was a discussion about the roof. And is the roof old? I know it's a flat roof. Is it old or is it leaking because of the tree?
My belief is that it's leaking because of the tree.
Okay.
It's a flat roof with the torch down paper. And it wasn't done that long ago. I could not give you an exact date on that, but usually those torch down roofs are 20 to 30-year roofs, and it isn't that old.
Thank you. And now looking at the Richardson House, and I'm looking specifically at slide 7 and then slide 8. We have the first edition, which was the kitchen and the still, and then we have the second edition. And it sounds like, at least from the staff report, there's not a lot of historical significance to that portion. Potentially, it was a storehouse, or what do we know about that?
I was informed that it's not viable. Is it historic significance? We'd have to really research more to it. We didn't decide at that meeting that it can go away.
Okay.
But we decided that if it was too expensive to do everything at once, there could be something done in there.
So looking at slide 7, I just want to try to get my head around the building. So I'm assuming the picture taker standing basically in Turtle Park looking westward?
Yes.
Okay. And the right-hand side of the picture, kind of where we see that, looks like a door where the siding looks a little bit different. Is that the second edition?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next slide, it looks like the roof is uniform. This does include the second edition as well?
The roof is uniform because it's been re-roofed and it all becomes one at some point. You can tell that it's at a different pitch than the main house.
But we're looking at both the first edition and the second edition
Yes.
from a southeasterly view.
Yes.
That looks pretty big, the second edition at least, on a relative basis.
You're right. From this angle, it does look big. It may be my Samsung phone. I'm not too sure. I did not have Tevin come and take pictures with me. So.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the scope of the project and the size. But yeah, thank you. Very informative.
Other questions?
Can I do a follow-up on that? So that roof, so that's part of the discussion you'll have of how to save the kitchen and then cut the roof off at the junction, I take it?
Yeah, I mean, this will all be determined with an architect.
Yes.
I think we've exhausted all our questions. you. Very fine report, Director Semino. We just, my only comment is, you know, if we can add any urgency to this at all, given all the impediments that we know are involved in something like this, you know. We know you'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to our last agenda item, last but not least, initiating proceedings for the levy and collection of assessments and ordering the preparation of the engineer's report for the Downtown Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District and Sierra Madre Lighting Maintenance District Number 1.
Hello
You're
again.
back.
It's the Chris show tonight. Usually the assessment districts are brought to you by our contract engineer, Kev Charkoudian. Kev has since retired this year. So we are contracting out our engineering services for our assessments with NBS, who is the firm that helped us establish the new downtown landscape district just a couple of years back. But tonight I bring you the resolutions 22-19 and 22-20 to be adopted for Lighting District Number 1 and the new Downtown Landscape Lighting Maintenance District. Lighting District Number 1 is an ad valorem district established in the early 60s and is based on property values. Residents in the area of Landscape Lighting District 1, not Landscape, I'm sorry, Lighting District 1, is Santa Anita Avenue, north of Grandview, Elkins, Vista, Oakwood, that area of town. So it's the Highland Oaks area of Sierra Madre. They pay, the residents there are charged roughly 17 cents per $100 of their assessed property value. That's a very similar assessment that was in downtown for the lighting districts that we have reestablished into a more viable district that will help the downtown businesses out. The Downtown Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District is a new district for the downtown businesses. It replaces the two old ad valorem districts and an old parking and landscape districts. So these districts, the two ad valorems were generating a lot of funds that we couldn't spend the money on because lighting only cost us so much. And then the parking and landscape districts were a set fee based on frontage of property, and they weren't making any money, and we were subsidizing with general funds for those uses. So hence the new district now will save the businesses and the property owners money because we won't be assessing so much, 17 cents per $100 value. We're assessing a fixed amount, and that will come out during this process for the districts. This is the second year of the new district, where the first year we didn't collect any assessment because we were living on our amounts from the past one. And this year we'll be collecting 50% of the anticipated assessment. And then next year we will be collecting 100% of the assessments. And again, you will see those dollar amounts as this process goes in the next two public hearings or two meetings. Tonight's process is to bring you the resolutions before the council for adoption, which initiates the engineering process of the two districts. At the May 24th City Council meeting, staff will present an annual engineering report, which will give you the dollar amounts for the districts, and declare the intention to confirm and set the assessments for the fiscal year 22-23. We will set a public hearing date for June 14th to take public comment, confirm the assessments, and order the levy for each district. Staff is recommending the City Council adopt resolutions 22-19 and resolutions 22-20, authorizing NBS Consulting to prepare and file with the city clerk the engineering report concerning the levy and collection of assessments within the Downtown Landscaping Lighting Maintenance Assessment District and Lighting District Number 1 for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. That is my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, do we have questions for Director Semino on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Parkhurst.
What's the difference in cost to businesses for the downtown district between what happened before we consolidated the districts and now?
Some districts, you know, just you picture a property that's sold in the last 10 years. The value of those properties for the lighting districts was based on the $100 assessed value of those properties. So recently sold properties were paying a lot more than properties that haven't sold in the last 30 years. So some of those properties that were owned for 30, 50 years are going to be paying a little bit more money in the new district. But the property owners that have purchased their properties since 1990, they're going to see a savings. I don't have those numbers. We had that when we were going through the process of the new district, and I didn't prepare for that, for those numbers.
So the district number 1, which is up Santa Anita, like you said, the Highland Oaks of Sierra Madre. So was that established because Edison wasn't providing lighting in that area, and Edison provides lighting in the other residential areas? Do I understand kind of, it just seems an odd lighting district, and I'm trying to wrap my head around why that one and not, you know, anywhere else in town.
So that was established at the same time as the downtown ones, and that's why it's an ad valorem one, which is based on property values. We did have other assessment districts for lighting districts in other development areas of town, which weren't based on that. They were based on footage of property, or they were based on just a dollar amount. And when there's a development, assessment districts are designed to help the city cover the cost of new development. So similar to what Newey's proposing with the parks and having an assessment on those properties to help pay for things. That's what they would do in the past also. But some of the lighting districts that were established back then didn't collect enough money. They were running a deficit, and throughout the years, the city engineering staff has recommended to council to remove some of those districts. So there was one on Fane Avenue when Wynwood Lane was built. Wynwood Lane and Fane had a district, and that one has been disbanded. There was one on North Hermosa, up way at the top of North Hermosa. There was an assessment district up there that's been disbanded. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but it's all dependent on the development area. When they get developed, if they don't have escalation clauses in those assessments, then they've just become to where they're not collecting enough money to even pay an engineer to do a assessment every year on them.
And is this District 1, is it collecting enough money to cover its costs?
Oh, this district is one that we will in the future want to redistrict and make it a more usable district for that area. Hence, we would be able to use it for the landscape on Santa Anita center divider there. We could use it for road repairs in that area if we were to redo it like we did the downtown district. Currently, they're paying a lot of money, and we're banking it. We don't have anything to spend it on except for the electricity and the light repairs.
Can we decrease the amount there? Like you said in the downtown district, you know, we didn't assess it for a while, and we kind of lived off, or we kind of used up the banked amount that's in there. Could we not charge for that for?
Once you don't charge for an assessment, and Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, but once you lower that dollar amount, you can't raise it with having another vote. There would have to be another 218 vote to raise it back up. But we could negotiate with those residents there to redo a new district and then disband this old one that is so costly.
And we could just disband it. We could also have a resolution to disband that district and make it part of everything else in the city, right?
We could. I assume we can, Alex. I'm not sure.
What would happen to the money that's
similar to
in that district now if we disbanded it?
Nothing would change. Well, yeah, nothing would change that I'm aware
That
of.
money would still be held for that region of the city. And then any new ones would be part of the overall lighting district of all of the rest of Sierra Madre.
I believe those funds are gonna be placed in the general fund. It's gonna be transferred, once that district is dissolved, those funds the surplus that remains in that district, once it's dissolved, is gonna be transferred over to the general fund. That's part of the reason why we're going through this process, to transfer over that surplus fund, because we can't do anything with it.
So part of this is transferring that funds to the general? No.
No,
Right. No.
Right, not tonight. Once the district is dissolved, then the funds will be transferred over to the general fund. And the reason why we have this issue to begin with is really Prop 13. Because pre-Prop 13, you could create these districts that had assessments based on property value. And post-Prop 13, you really couldn't. And so there was a new formula developed. But as Director Semino said, once we set that rate, we couldn't really lower it, because if we lowered it, we couldn't raise it again without going to a vote of the residents. We just kind of kept it at that rate because of Prop 13, and it just kept accumulating more and more funds. And when we wanted to do other lighting districts in different parts of the city, we had to use this other method that just wasn't as good. It just didn't collect as much funds. So thanks to our consultants at MBS, I think we found the proper balance to bring in the right revenue to address what the city needs.
The right revenue for both districts or for the?
I believe it's a consolidated district, if I'm not mistaken, right?
The downtown district is now a consolidated district.
Right.
It doesn't include the lighting number 1 district.
Oh, yeah, so the downtown one makes perfect sense to me. But I'm not understanding, and apologize for my density here, what we're being asked to do with District 1. That's not clear to me from the staff report.
I actually don't recall now off the top of my head, but I thought we were dissolving District 1. Is that not the case?
No, that's not the case, but it can be done, and this is our time to do that. So tonight, we're asking you to approve the resolutions for the engineering report. So when we come back to you with the engineering report, you will now see the dollar amounts. You'll see the expenditures for those districts, and you can ask these questions, and I assume at that time, we can decide if we want to follow through with that district or give those residents their gift.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
That is helpful. Yes, Councilmember Creed.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on that point, I mean, I remember when we went through the consolidation of the downtown districts, and it requires a fair amount of effort in terms of outreach to the residents and explaining to them, the proposal and the pros and the cons. So I would assume that would be part of what we would discuss in terms of if there were options on this lighting district in terms of the outreach, and it would be a similar type campaign.
Yes, if council's wishes was for us to reestablish a new district up there and disband this one in replacement, it would take that. It would be just like we did in downtown. It took us 2 chances to it. It took a lot of work to get that established. But like you said, I mean, if you disband it and the money goes in the general fund, you can earmark that money to benefit that area of town with, street repairs or landscape of the center divider of Santa Anita, which is in much need too. And it can be done a lot sooner if we did it the way you are thinking right now.
Yes.
So Director Semino, I'm trying to envision the borders of lighting district. I believe it's lighting and maintenance district number 1. It's north of Grandview. That's the southern border. So Grandview would be the southern border. As far as the western border, does it head west of Santa Anita, or is Santa Anita the western?
It's a little confusing the way it's written, but I think it's on the west side of Santa Anita also, but for Oakwood Place, and that's it. It goes straight up Santa Anita. Because Oakwood Place was developed at the same time the east side of Santa Anita was developed also. So Sierra Madre's boundary goes 2 blocks into the Highland Oaks area on the east side of Santa Anita, and then north all the way to the gate, or to Arno Avenue.
Okay. So, yeah, as you mentioned, that median, which is now kind of an eyesore, right?
We're watering it
we're not-
enough
well,
to keep the pine trees alive.
That's important,
Yeah.
right? But, you know, we saw what Arcadia did, but that is our responsibility and the responsibility of
That is
that
ours.
maintenance district to keep that nice and potentially help the property values of the people that live in that area. They're paying for this tax, okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, all right. So the median would, as far as we're looking at it now, the monies or funds within that fund should pay for any type of repair or upgrades that we're thinking about currently, but we could also disband it and earmark those monies as well.
Yes, and I think the way MBS wrote the resolution, they wrote it as lighting and landscape district, and I don't think it is. I think it's just a lighting district, and I was going to discuss that with them when we came back to you with the engineering report, because I think they misread that district.
Okay.
If it was landscape all these years, we'd be able to.
That makes sense now. Okay, thank you, Dr. Spino.
Anyone else? You've been very patient with us. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up for public comment. And going once, going twice, sold with no public comment. So we'll bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I mean, it seems to me that this is just a starting point in this process, and so, I think, authorizing the reporting to get the information that we need seems to me like, something, easy to support, and then we can have the more substantive discussion when we actually have the facts that the engineering report, uncovers.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I will move to approve resolutions 2219 and 2220 as presented.
Is there a second?
So I'd like to make a slight amendment to that. So when it comes back, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the map of it. So I'd love to just make sure we see a map of this lighting district 1. I think I know where it is, but I'm following what Mayor Pro Tem Garcia had, and I just want to make sure I know what streets are in it. So when we make that decision.
So we'll amend this motion to include a map.
Yeah.
Correct?
Include a map of lighting district 1.
Would you accept that amendment?
Sure, to the extent necessary. I'm not sure that the engineering report wouldn't have included it already.
Right, it probably will.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I second my amendment?
Sure you can.
Then I'll second it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor with an amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Wonderful. Are there any ideas for future agenda items?
Did you have one?
Well, I wanted to, I don't know if, because I know city manager is doing some investigation on this issue of electric commercial lawnmowers possibly being utilized by the contractors we contract with. So I would like to see that come to council at some point, but I think staff's got a lot of work to do in terms of figuring out if it's even worth our trouble, so.
Mayor, I think that we can include that as an item. We are gonna enter or begin an RFP for our maintenance, and we can include electrification of mowing equipment as an option in that RFP.
Perfect. So that has to be brought to council then. Good. Well, then let's agendize that. Super. Thank you for reminding me. Other ideas?
Just as
Please.
quick follow-up to that is just to make sure in the report include some of the rebates that are offered by some of our local organizations
Right.
and funding.
Of course. Any others? Okay, I'd like to see if we have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, that's right.
I really thought landscaping was included in that district, but that makes sense because we've done something with it.
The idea of putting in the middle school.
Total difference from Arcadia dollars.
Uncomfortable just sitting up there. Right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Me? You were asking me to write my fiber.
Lower black.
Oh, I'm signing? Black. Hold on.
Fiber 2, other ones are yours. You're not gonna play.
That's the contract between the city of Monrovia and city of Sierra Madre.
I don't know if I had talked to you about it, but it was a total payment.
I don't see my name anymore.
You said you weren't ready, but it was close enough.
You know what, this one's for Jose. I apologize. This one's for Jose. Because I remember the recommendation was to allow the city manager to sign. Hi, Joel.
Too far outside Madison's territory, so we created that district up there. That's my understanding.
It's basically, it'd be co-op.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's just something that talking about all this business. Well, it's not like you're saying that these people do.
Looking for it, Joel.
It was a trend of the time and everyone was doing it.
Which one?
Yeah. I don't know. So I hope you don't mind me giving that teaser.
No, that was awesome.
Good.
That was so great.
Good. I'm glad you appreciated that.
That's why.
Take a picture of it, send it to me.
Right.
Because I don't know if it's possible.
Right.
And
I only see the area I work in. My eye has got trained from reading all these documents, and so I noticed that difference.
I went yesterday to that new little place that used to be a Subway, that new place Perry, and I cannot believe the price I paid for a sandwich and drink.